Tonight's story comes from a late-night chat I stumbled on. Somebody swore it happened for real, and honestly, it still gives me chills. I moved into this old rental house in rural Ohio. It was cheap, too cheap maybe, but I was fresh out of college and needed a place fast. The landlord was a quiet guy who handed me the keys and said, "Don't open the basement door, it's sealed for safety." He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He just left. The first week was normal. I forgot to clean my dishes, the faucet dripped all night, and my cat Luna knocked over a plant on day 3. I blamed myself for everything. Then, around day 10, I noticed the padlock on that basement door had shifted. I was sure I'd locked it myself, but now the chain sat crooked, like someone had fiddled with it. I shrugged it off. I told myself old houses settle. But then, one night around 3 a.m., I woke to a faint tap. Tap, tap. I froze in bed. My heart thumped like a drum. I listened. It came again, like someone gently knocking from the other side of the door. I sat up, stared at the ceiling. Luna was tucked under the covers, purring. I waited. Nothing else. I tried to sleep, I really did. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard footsteps creaking down the basement stairs. I blamed the pipes, I blamed the wind, I blamed myself for watching too many horror videos. By night 14, I was a wreck. I couldn't focus at work. My coworkers asked if I was okay. I lied and said I had a cold. One evening, I went to the kitchen and saw muddy footprints on the floor by the door. Not Luna's, too big and too uneven. I grabbed my phone, flashlight app on, and crept toward the basement. I stopped when I got close. My hand trembled over the lock. I thought about calling the landlord, but I thought, he'll say I'm crazy. So I dialed 911 instead. My voice shook. I couldn't even say basement. I mumbled, Someone's in my basement, please come." The dispatcher sounded calm. She said help was on the way. I sat on the couch, knees pulled to my chest. I kept hearing those steps. The whole house felt alive. I stared at the door. I thought, maybe it's a raccoon? But I knew it wasn't. When the police arrived, I led them down the hall. They had flashlights and badges. They looked serious. One of them clicked the padlock open and yanked the door. It creaked as it swung inward. I squeezed my eyes shut. Then I heard them whisper. I opened one eye. There was a narrow stairwell leading to a small room. Inside, I saw a dirty mattress, a pile of canned beans, and an old cell phone with no service bars. The cops said someone had been living there. They found empty bottles, a worn blanket, and footprints in the dust that matched the ones in my kitchen. Later, the police told me a guy had escaped from a halfway house nearby months ago. They suspected he'd been hiding in abandoned places. They never found him, just traces of his stays. I moved out the next day. I left everything behind. My stuff went into boxes and out the front door. I barely looked back. Luna was calm in her carrier, like she knew something was wrong. Now, sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and swear I hear a tap, 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 or a creak, like someone stepping downstairs. I tell myself it's the wind, it's the old pipes, but I never go back to that house. I never want to know if he's still down there, watching, waiting. So that's my story. I don't have photos, I don't have proof. Just this memory that won't leave me. And sometimes I wonder if I really heard those knocks, or if I imagined the whole thing. I'm Mike, 23. Last spring, I booked a cheap Airbnb in upstate New York for a weekend away. The pictures looked fine. Old house, big yard, quiet road. The listing said cozy and private, but it never mentioned the basement. When I walked in, I saw a small door in the hallway. It was locked, and the knob had scratches all around it, like someone had been clawing to get out. I thought, weird, but I shrugged and went on unpacking. That first night, I made ramen in the kitchen. I forgot to buy milk, so I used water. The place smelled like damp wood and old paint. I watched some TV, but the reception was fuzzy. I told myself I was just tired. I went to bed early. Around midnight, I woke to a thump under the floor. I froze. The house was quiet. No cars, no wind. I lay there listening. It sounded like muffled talking. I thought maybe it was the pipes. I've heard weird pipe noises before, right? I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. It didn't work. Morning came slow. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and watched birds. I felt uneasy, but I told myself it was nothing. I remembered the scratches on the door. I touched the knob. It was cold. I backed away. I thought, maybe the host forgot to tell me about a storage room. I didn't want to bother them. That afternoon, I took a walk down the road. I passed an old barn. It looked empty. I felt like someone was watching me, but when I looked back, there was nobody. I laughed to myself. "Get it together, Mike," I said out loud. A car passed by and splashed mud on my shoes. I kicked at it. Normal stuff. That night, I cooked chicken and rice. I dropped a glass on the floor. It rolled toward a vent in the middle of the kitchen. I bent down to pick it up, and I heard crying. A woman's soft sob. I froze. My heart thumped, but I waited. The crying stopped. I dropped the glass again, hard. Clink, clink. The sobbing came back. It was right under my feet. I backed away and knocked on the floor with my knuckles. "Hello?" I said, voice shaking. Nothing. I ran to my phone. I dialed 911. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely press the numbers. The operator asked what was wrong. I said, "There's someone under the floor." I heard crying. She asked for my address. I told her. She said help was on the way. I stood in the kitchen, staring at that vent. Every little sound made me jump. I remembered the scratches. I remembered the talking. I felt stupid, but I knew I wasn't imagining it. When the police arrived, I led them inside. 2 officers with flashlights and guns drawn. They looked serious. One knelt by the vent and pried the grate off. The other moved the couch. They found a small hatch under the floorboards. They called for backup. I stepped back, my phone light shaking in my hand. They pulled up the hatch and shone their lights down a narrow ladder. It went into darkness. They asked me if I knew anything. I shook my head. My voice wouldn't come. They said they'd check it out. I waited in the living room, pacing, sweating. I could hear muffled footsteps down below. Then a woman's voice. "Help me, please." It was faint but real. I covered my mouth and felt tears. After what felt like forever, the officers dragged a young woman up the ladder. She was pale, clothes dirty, eyes wide. They handcuffed a man crawling out behind her. He looked empty. He didn't fight. They told me he'd been living under the house for weeks, maybe months. They found blankets, canned food, an old phone. I grabbed my bag and ran out. I didn't look back. I drove 2 hours home, the radio on full blast. I tried to calm down, but every bump in the road made me flinch. A week later, I saw a news article. Human trafficking victims found in a hidden basement under an illegal rental unit. The address was mine. The host never answered my messages. They said he disappeared. I still get nightmares. Sometimes I swear I hear crying under my floor at my own apartment. I don't know if I'm just paranoid or if he moved on to someone else's house. I guess I'll never know. But I do know this. If you ever book a place and see a locked door you can't open, listen to your gut. because sometimes the things you don't see are the ones that scare you the most. I'm Tyler. I got a temp job cleaning out a storage basement under a closed-down movie theater. It was huge, dark, and full of junk. No cameras. The first day, I tripped over empty boxes and dust. I thought, okay, just old stuff. The manager, Mr. Lee, gave me a flashlight and said, "Watch your step." I nodded, though my throat felt dry. On day 2, I heard scratching behind a stack of chairs. I paused. The theater upstairs was empty. I told myself it was rats. I laughed, but my voice shook. I almost spilled my coffee. Day 3, I found a locked metal cage behind shelves. Inside was a torn mattress and a rusted chair with straps. I called Mr. Lee. He walked down, glanced inside, and said, "That's just old set dressing." His eyes darted away. I felt weird but didn't argue. Later that afternoon, I found a woman's earring near the cage. It was bent, like someone yanked it. Then I saw dark stains on the concrete. I knelt. It looked like dried blood. My hands trembled. I shoved the earring in my pocket and called the police. They came fast. They sealed the basement and took photos. I waited in my car, engine off, shaking. I remember the wind rattling a broken window upstairs. The officers didn't speak much. The next day, I read a report. Forensics found multiple DNA samples in that cage. One matched a girl missing since 1999. They condemned the building. I stared at the news on my phone and felt sick. I quit that afternoon. I left my gear in my car. I didn't tell my friends why. I just said, "That place gave me the creeps." Sometimes I wake up and swear I hear footsteps in my room. I tell myself it's my old floorboards creaking, but I don't sleep well. I never saw Mr. Lee again. They questioned him, but he walked free. I wonder what he knew, and I wonder who else found that cage before me. Maybe I was lucky to get out. I still can't believe it happened.